My name is Emily Harrison. I was 47 years old when I realized I had already destroyed my life. I just hadn't been caught yet. It didn't begin with a dramatic moment. No thunder. No screaming. No sudden realization that I was becoming someone I would one day hate. It started on a Tuesday, an ordinary gray morning in March, the kind of morning where the coffee tastes slightly bitter, the house is too quiet, and the world feels like it's holding its breath. Daniel was upstairs, my husband of 13 years, lying in bed, fighting something I couldn't see but could feel in every corner of our home. Cancer has a way of doing that. It doesn't just live inside the body of the person diagnosed. It spreads into the air, into conversations, into silence. By then, Daniel had already lost most of his hair. The chemo had taken it in uneven patches, like something cruel and deliberate. His skin had turned pale, almost translucent, and some days, he couldn't even keep water down. That morning, he was in the bathroom, throwing up for the third time before sunrise. And I was standing in the kitchen, staring at my phone. That's when the message came through. "Hey, stranger, thinking about you today." From Ryan, my coworker, my friend. The man I told myself meant nothing. I should have deleted it. That's the part I replay the most. That exact second. The choice. I could have erased it, blocked him, walked upstairs and held my husband's hand while he fought for his life. Instead, I smiled. And I typed back. You want to know how a woman becomes the villain in her own story? It doesn't happen all at once. It's not one big decision. It's 1,000 small ones. Tiny betrayals. Barely noticeable at first. Like staying a little longer at work because home feels too heavy. Like laughing a little too hard at someone else's jokes because it reminds you of who you used to be. Like telling yourself you deserve something. Anything that doesn't hurt. Ryan started as nothing, just the new marketing director, confident, easy to talk to, the kind of man who looked at you like you were still alive, even when you felt like you were slowly disappearing. We had coffee after a brutal meeting. I remember that day clearly, because it was the first time in months I didn't feel like a caregiver, or a mother, or someone holding everything together with shaking hands. I was just Emily, and he saw me. Not with pity, not with sympathy, but with interest. You're allowed to feel overwhelmed, he told me once, his voice soft, steady. Taking care of someone doesn't mean you stop existing. That sentence stayed with me. It wrapped itself around every excuse I would make after. Daniel's diagnosis had come the previous February. Stage 2. Aggressive, but treatable. That's what the doctors said, and I believed them. We both did. We held hands in that sterile office and made promises. The kind you think are unbreakable. In sickness and in health, I whispered. And I meant it. God, I meant it. But no one tells you what in sickness actually looks like. They don't tell you about the nights you spend cleaning up vomit at 2 a.m., or the way exhaustion becomes your permanent state, or how resentment sneaks in quietly, disguised as grief. Daniel changed. Of course he did. He was in pain. The medications made him forgetful sometimes, irritable other times. He would snap at me, then apologize, then snap again. And I told myself I understood that it wasn't really him. But understanding doesn't make it easier. It just makes you feel guilty for struggling. Our kids felt it too. Lily started speaking softer, like her voice might break something fragile. Max stopped asking to play. Instead, he watched, always watching, as if he was trying to figure out which version of our family was real. Ryan became my escape. At first, it was just messages, then calls, then something more. We danced around the line for weeks, flirting just enough to pretend it wasn't real. Until one night. It was. Daniel had just finished his 3rd round of chemo. He slept for almost 14 hours straight. The kids were at my mother's house, and I told myself I was going to the gym. Instead, I drove to Ryan's apartment. I remember sitting in my car for a full minute before going up, my hands on the steering wheel, my heart pounding like it knew, like it was trying to stop me, but I didn't listen. He opened the door, wearing a loose t-shirt, barefoot, relaxed. "You look like you need a drink," he said. "I need something," I replied. That was the truth. Just not the kind I was willing to admit. We sat on his couch, drinking wine, talking about everything except my real life. He told me about his past, his failed relationship, his plans, his dreams, and for 3 hours, I forgot. Forgot about the hospital, forgot about the pills, forgot about the version of myself I was supposed to be. When he kissed me, I didn't stop him. When he pulled me closer, I didn't pull away. And when he whispered that he'd been thinking about this for months, I whispered back, so have I. I went home at midnight, quietly, carefully. Slipping into bed beside my husband, Daniel shifted in his sleep, instinctively reaching for me. Even then, even like that, he still reached for me, and I let him. I wrapped my arms around him, held him close, and stared into the darkness, telling myself it was just one mistake, just one moment. It wouldn't happen again. It happened again. 2 days later, and the day after that, and every chance I got after. That's the thing about betrayal. The first time feels impossible. The second time feels easier. And by the third, it feels like a choice you've already made. I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone who could lie without hesitation. Doctor appointments became excuses. Errands stretched into hours. Every story carefully constructed, every detail rehearsed. And afterward, I would come home with flowers. For Daniel, just to make you smile, I'd say. When really, I was trying to wash the guilt off my skin. And the worst part? He believed me every time. I don't know what I'd do without you, he told me once, squeezing my hand weakly. You're my rock. Those words should have stopped me. They should have shattered everything, but they didn't. Not yet, because every time the guilt got too loud, Ryan would text, and I would run right back to him, like he was oxygen, like I was drowning. But I wasn't drowning. Not really. I was choosing, and somewhere deep down, I knew it. I just didn't care enough to stop. The worst part isn't that I betrayed my husband. It's that I did it while he was fighting for his life. And even then, I kept going. That's how it begins. Not with a single moment, but with a series of choices you keep making, even when you know exactly where they'll lead. And I promise you this, by the time you realize you've gone too far, you already have. By the 4th week, I had stopped thinking of it as an affair. That is how far gone I was. I had renamed it in my mind. A refuge. An escape. A place to breathe. Anything but what it actually was. Ryan never asked me to explain myself in ways that made me uncomfortable. That was part of what made him dangerous. He didn't push too hard in the beginning. He just made room for me to keep lying to myself. With him, I wasn't the exhausted wife measuring out anti-nausea medication at midnight. I wasn't the mother trying to smile for 2 frightened children who had started speaking in whispers. I wasn't the woman standing in the laundry room at dawn, crying silently into a pile of clean towels because I couldn't remember the last time anyone had touched me without needing something. With Ryan, I was still desirable, still interesting, still a woman, and I clung to that feeling with both hands, like it justified everything that came after. It didn't. But at the time, I treated that feeling like medicine. Daniel's treatment got worse before it got better. That's what everyone says about chemo. But saying it and living inside it are 2 different things. There were days he couldn't keep food down at all. Days when the smell of toast made him gag. Days when he looked at me with hollow, feverish eyes and asked what day it was, because the medications had blurred time into something soft and cruel. Then there were the angry days, the days when pain made him sharp. He would snap because I brought the wrong blanket, because I answered too quickly, because I didn't answer quickly enough, because I looked tired, because he was tired, because cancer had moved into our lives and made everything feel like an argument with no real target. And afterward, he would cry. I'm sorry, he'd whisper. I'm so sorry, Em. And I would hold him and say, I know. But something ugly had already begun growing inside me. Resentment. Not because he was sick. I told myself that over and over. Not because he was sick, but because everything in our life had started orbiting his pain, and there were moments, brief, shameful moments when I felt invisible inside my own home. Ryan noticed that invisibility. He noticed when I changed my hair and nobody at home did. He noticed when I was running on 3 hours of sleep. He noticed when I stared too long out the office window after a call from Daniel's oncologist. One afternoon, after a meeting I barely survived, he followed me into the break room and closed the door gently behind him. "You don't have to be strong every second," he said. I laughed then, but it came out broken. "That's funny," I told him, "because at home, I kind of do." He stepped closer, not touching me yet. That's exactly my point. I should have walked away. Instead, I let myself stand there in the quiet with him, breathing in coffee and copier toner and danger. And that night, when Daniel fell asleep before dinner and the kids were in the living room watching cartoons too softly, I found myself checking my phone every few minutes for Ryan's name. That was when I knew it had stopped being temporary. I had let another life bloom in secret. I just hadn't admitted yet that secrets grow teeth. The lies became easier in practical ways and harder in every other way. I learned how to delete texts without thinking, how to clear call logs, how to keep my voice steady when Daniel asked, "How long will the pharmacy take?" How to come home with grocery bags or flowers or a takeout coffee I didn't even want, just to make the timeline look believable. I built my deception in layers. Work emergencies, traffic, support group meetings I never attended. A woman can become frighteningly efficient when she's determined not to be caught. That was one of the worst realizations later. How much energy I had for the affair, while telling myself I had nothing left to give my family. And Daniel kept thanking me. That part never got easier. Some nights, after helping him into bed, after changing the sheets because he'd woken up sweating and shaking, he would look at me with so much gratitude it made my chest hurt. "I don't know how I got so lucky," he said once. I remember exactly where we were. Bedroom lamp on, rain tapping the window, his face thin and pale against the pillow, and me, sitting on the edge of the bed in clean clothes after having just come from Ryan's apartment. I smiled. I kissed his forehead, and I said, "You don't have to thank me." Then I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at myself in the mirror until my own reflection looked like a stranger in borrowed skin. The children saw more than I wanted to believe. Lily, especially. At 10, she had Daniel's quiet intelligence and my habit of noticing what wasn't being said. She started asking questions in these careful little ways that made me uneasy. "Mom, are you going back to work tonight?" "No, sweetheart." "Then why are you dressed up?" "I'm not dressed up." "You are for a pharmacy run." I laughed it off. She didn't. Max changed in a different way. He got louder at school and quieter at home. His teacher called to say he'd shoved another boy during recess. The counselor said it was common for kids under stress. Big feelings. No language for them. Trauma looking for an exit. At one appointment, she showed me a drawing he'd made of our family, Daniel lying down, Lily beside him, me standing far away from all of them. "Where's Mommy going?" the counselor asked him gently. He shrugged and said, "Work." Work. That word followed me around for days. Work was my alibi. Work was my disguise. Work was what my son thought had stolen me before he was old enough to know the truth. And still, I didn't stop. The day Daniel collapsed should have ended everything. It should have burned the affair out of me completely. But guilt is not the same thing as transformation. I know that now. That morning began like every other day in my double life. Daniel had chemo at 9. Ryan had a presentation at 11. And I was balancing both commitments with the numb precision of someone who had practiced moral compartmentalization until it felt almost normal. Daniel's sister Clara had flown in from Portland the night before to help. Clara had never fully trusted me, though I didn't understand then how much she had already started suspecting. She was fiercely protective of Daniel, the kind of sister who could make concern sound like an accusation, even when she smiled. At the cancer center, I helped Daniel out of the car. He was weak that morning, weaker than usual. And for one brief moment as he leaned against me, I almost told him everything. Not the details, not Ryan. Just the truth that I was failing him in some essential, unforgivable way. But then Clara came around the passenger side with Daniel's bag, and the moment disappeared. "You sure you don't want me to stay?" I asked. I already knew what I wanted him to say. Daniel managed a tired smile. "Go to work. Clara's here. You've already missed enough." "My boss has been understanding," I said automatically. Clara looked at me for half a second too long. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Still, go. We'll be okay." "We'll be okay." I kissed him on the cheek and watched Clara lead him inside. Then I got back in my car and drove to the office. Ryan's presentation went well. Of course it did. He was magnetic in rooms like that. Confident without seeming arrogant, smooth without feeling rehearsed. He stood at the front of the conference room talking about projections and market strategy, while my phone sat face down beside my notebook, like a live grenade. Every now and then he glanced at me. Those glances were small, almost invisible to anyone else. But I knew what they meant. The secret life. The other current running beneath the ordinary one. Afterward, people congratulated him. Someone suggested drinks later. Ryan caught me by the elevators and said, "Lunch?" It was never just lunch. I hesitated. For a split second, I thought of Daniel in his chemo chair, of Clara sitting beside him, of the antiseptic smell of the cancer center, of the way he'd smiled at me through exhaustion, because he still trusted me. Then Ryan touched the small of my back. Such a small gesture. Barely anything. And I said yes. We were at his apartment less than 40 minutes later. I wish I could tell you I was dissociating, that I felt trapped, that some dramatic force carried me there against my better self. But the truth is much uglier, because it is much simpler. I chose it. Every staircase, every kiss, every lie. We were in bed when my phone started vibrating across the nightstand, then ringing. Then vibrating again. 7 missed calls from Clara. A text. "Call me now." My stomach dropped so hard it felt physical. I called immediately. She answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" she demanded. Her voice was sharp with fear, not anger. "Not yet." "What happened?" Daniel collapsed during treatment. His white blood cell count crashed. They rushed him to ICU. He was asking for you. For a second, the room went silent around me. Ryan was sitting up now, sheet around his waist, face changing as he watched mine. "What hospital room?" I asked, already scrambling for my clothes. "Just get here," Clara snapped. "Now!" I don't remember the drive clearly, only fragments. A red light I ignored, my hands slipping on the steering wheel, the sound of my own breath, too fast and shallow. I kept seeing Daniel's face when I left him that morning. The weak smile, the trust, the way he told me to go. At the hospital, Clara was waiting outside the ICU. She took one look at me and knew. Not everything, but enough. "Where were you?" she asked. "At work." She stepped closer. "I called your office." My mouth went dry. I had to step out. "For what?" "Errands." She let out a short, disbelieving sound. "Errands?" It landed like a slap. I looked past her toward the ICU doors. "Can I see him?" Her eyes filled with something colder than fury. "Disgust." "Your husband is unconscious," she said. "And you were unavailable." I had no defense against that. None. When they finally let me in, Daniel looked so fragile, I nearly dropped to my knees. Tubes. Monitors. That relentless mechanical beeping that makes hospitals feel less like places of healing and more like negotiations with death. His skin looked almost translucent. His lips were dry. One hand lay still against the blanket, and I took it in both of mine, as if that gesture could erase where I'd been an hour earlier. "Daniel," I whispered, crying before I even realized I was. "Please wake up," I begged. For his life, for forgiveness he hadn't yet been asked to give, for another chance I had done nothing to deserve. He stayed in ICU for 3 days, then another week in recovery. An infection, the doctors said. Severe, but not uncommon with aggressive treatment. Close call, but survivable. Close call. That phrase haunted me, because Daniel had come close to dying while I was in another man's bed. There are truths so ugly, they don't fit inside your head all at once. You can only look at them in flashes. That was one of them. When Daniel was strong enough to talk more than a few minutes at a time, he reached for my hand and said something that should have destroyed whatever was left of the person I had become. When I blacked out, he said quietly, I thought, this might be it. I swallowed hard. Don't say that, but I need you to hear me. His eyes were wet. All I could think about was you and the kids. I just wanted more time. More ordinary days. More life with you. I couldn't breathe. He kept going, voice trembling. We're going to get through this, Em. We are. And when I'm better, we should do that trip we always talked about. When the kids are older. Maybe renew our vows someday. Start over a little. Start over. The words lodged in my chest like shrapnel. I bent forward and hugged him carefully, afraid if I looked at his face any longer, I would confess everything right there in that hospital room. Instead, I said, we'll have all of it. And he believed me. That night, Ryan texted, How is he? Been thinking about you. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the hospital chair. I didn't answer. Not that night. Not the next day either. For 2 weeks after Daniel came home, I became the wife I should have been from the beginning. I took time off work, cooked meals, helped Lily with homework at the kitchen table, read to Max at night, held Daniel when the pain got bad, sat beside him through the nausea and the fear and the exhaustion. And for a while, I thought maybe horror had finally done what conscience hadn't. Maybe this was my wake-up call. Maybe I had seen the edge clearly enough to step back. But the human mind is talented at rebuilding the lies it needs. Daniel had a good day, then another. One afternoon, he laughed, really laughed, at something silly Max said over dinner. And for a brief moment, the house felt almost normal again. That frightened me more than I understood at the time. Because once things looked survivable, my justifications came rushing back. He doesn't need me every second. I deserve one conversation. I only need closure. I'm going to end it properly. People always imagine betrayal as passion. Most of the time, it's entitlement wearing the mask of confusion. That night, after Daniel fell asleep smiling for the first time in weeks, my phone lit up. A photo from Ryan at some work event, black suit, crooked grin. Caption, miss your face. I should have deleted it. Instead, I stared. And in the silence of my own bedroom, beside the man whose life had nearly slipped away, I felt that old restlessness start moving through me again. The hunger to escape. The craving to be someone else for just a few hours. I told Daniel I needed to pick up prescriptions from the 24-hour pharmacy. He nodded sleepily. Okay. Be careful. I kissed his forehead. Then I drove to Ryan's apartment. I stayed until 2 a.m. When I came home, Daniel was still asleep. The prescription bag I bought on the way back sat crumpled in the passenger seat, like evidence. I stood in the kitchen in the dark for a long time before going upstairs. That was the night I understood something terrible. I was no longer having an affair because I was overwhelmed. I was having an affair because I had allowed desire and selfishness to hollow me out so completely that even terror hadn't made me stop. And still, I didn't stop. The truth didn't come out in some dramatic, cinematic way. No carefully timed confession. No moment of courage. It came out the way most truths do. Messy. Accidental. Brutal. And completely out of my control. By then, I had grown careless. Not because I thought I wouldn't get caught, but because a part of me had stopped believing consequences were real. 4 months of lies will do that to you. They blur the edges between what's possible and what's inevitable. I had saved Ryan's number under a fake name, Dr. Peterson. Convenient. Logical. Safe. Except I forgot one thing. Our family iPad synced with my messages. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Daniel was upstairs, resting after another round of chemo. I was in the shower, and my phone. My carefully managed, constantly guarded phone lit up somewhere else. On a screen I wasn't watching. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear that blue shirt I like. From Dr. Peterson. Lily knew who Dr. Peterson was. Daniel's oncologist, a 60-year-old man with a soft voice and careful hands. Not someone who texted like that. Not someone who used hearts. Not someone who said, "Wear that shirt I like." She didn't understand everything, but she understood enough. She carried the iPad upstairs. To Daniel. I didn't hear the moment everything broke. Not at first, just the sound. A scream. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was something deeper, something raw. The kind of sound that doesn't come from the throat. It comes from somewhere lower, somewhere primal. I ran out of the bathroom, barely wrapping a towel around myself, water still dripping down my back. Daniel! He was on the bedroom floor, the iPad in his hands, scrolling. Reading. Shaking. Don't, I said instinctively, stepping toward him. Daniel, don't. His voice cut through mine like ice. Don't you dare say my name. I stopped. I had never heard that tone from him before. Not once in 13 years. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Mom, she whispered. Why is Dr. Peterson saying those things to you? That question, that innocent, confused question, it split something open in the room. Daniel looked up at me, and in that moment, I saw something I had never seen before. Not anger, not even hatred. Something colder, something final. Go to your room, Lily, he said, his voice trembling but controlled. She hesitated. Now! She ran. The silence that followed felt like standing inside a collapsing building. Daniel didn't yell. That would have been easier. Instead, he started reading every message. Out loud, his voice breaking with each one. You make me feel alive. I closed my eyes. Daniel, please. I wish I could stay longer this morning. Stop. I hate leaving you. Each sentence landed like a blade. Not just on him, but on me, too, because hearing it out loud stripped away every lie I had built around it. This, he whispered, looking at me, his hands shaking violently now. This was while I was in treatment? I couldn't answer. His voice cracked. While I was throwing up? While I couldn't stand without help? While our kids were asking if I was going to die? I didn't. While I was in the ICU? That one hit differently, because he was right. He dropped the iPad. It hit the floor with a dull, final sound. 4 months, he said, almost to himself. 4 months of my life. The worst 4 months. And you were... He couldn't finish. He stood abruptly. Too fast. Too weak. And then he staggered. I reached for him instinctively. He pulled away, like my touch burned. And then he turned and ran to the bathroom. The sound of him vomiting echoed down the hallway. For a second, I just stood there, frozen. Useless. And then I followed, because that's what I had always done. Followed. Helped. Cleaned up. Played the role. Except this time, I knew. This wasn't the chemo. Daniel. Don't come near me. His voice was hoarse. Destroyed. I stood in the doorway, watching him grip the sink like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I would have forgiven anything, he said, not looking at me. Anything else. That sentence settled into the room like something permanent. Clara arrived within the hour. Daniel must have called her. Or maybe Lily did. I don't know. All I remember is the look on her face when she walked in. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She saw Daniel. She saw me. She saw the iPad on the floor. And she understood everything. You have 10 minutes, she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. To pack a bag and get out. Clara, if you're not gone, she continued, stepping closer, I will call the police and have you removed. This is my house too. She didn't even blink. Do you want your children to watch their mother be escorted out by police? That did it. I packed clothes, shoes, things that didn't matter, because nothing that actually mattered could fit into a suitcase. Upstairs, I could hear Daniel crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just broken, Clara murmuring to him.
Soft. Protective.
As I walked down the stairs, suitcase in hand, Max stepped out of his room. Mom? His voice was small.
Uncertain.
Where are you going? I stopped. I have to go away for a little while, buddy. Is it because Dad's sick? That question. No, I said quickly. No, it's not because of that. Then why? I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. There are moments in life where the truth is too big to say out loud, and lies feel too small to hold it. It's complicated. He looked at me. Really looked. Is Dad going to die? My chest tightened. No, he's going to be okay. Are you coming back? That question, that was the one I couldn't answer. Because even then, even in that moment, somewhere deep down, I knew there was no coming back from this. I left. That night, I stayed in a hotel. I called Daniel. Over and over. No answer. I texted.
Apologized. Explained. Begged.
Nothing. Ryan called too. I didn't answer him either. For the first time in 4 months, I had nowhere to run. The next morning, the silence broke. Not from Daniel, from the world. Clara had made a post. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Some women stand by their husbands through cancer, it read. Others use it as an excuse to betray them. You know who you are. It spread. Fast. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, comments, messages,
Judgment.
I watched it happen in real time, from a hotel bed that smelled like bleach and regret. 3 days later, I was served divorce papers. The woman delivering them didn't hide the look on her face. You Emily Harrison? Yes. You've been served. She handed me the envelope like it was something dirty. Have a blessed day.
Blessed.
I almost laughed. Ryan asked me to come stay with him, said we could figure things out together, start over. But standing in that hotel room, holding those papers, looking at my life reduced to legal language and consequences, I realized something. Ryan had never been my future. He was my escape. And now that there was nothing left to escape from, he felt empty. I thought you loved me, he said when I told him I needed space. I thought I did too. That was the most honest thing I had said in months. He slapped me. Not hard, but enough. And I didn't react because some part of me believed I deserved it. Then he cried, and I held him. And in that moment, we both knew. Whatever this was, it was over. Not because we chose to end it, but because the reality we had been avoiding had finally caught up to us. You can't build something real on something that was never honest to begin with. And everything after that was just consequences.
Unavoidable. Permanent.
And only just beginning. The divorce was fast, faster than anything that had taken 13 years to build. There were no dramatic courtroom scenes, no shouting, no last-minute pleas, just paperwork, signatures, and a quiet, methodical dismantling of everything that had once been my life. Daniel didn't fight me. He didn't need to. His lawyer, someone from his support group, handled everything with a precision that felt almost surgical. The house, primary custody,
Alimony. Child support.
I agreed to all of it, without negotiation, without resistance. Because what argument could I possibly make? That I deserved fairness? That I had also suffered? That I was still a good person despite what I'd done? None of it would have mattered. Not to the law, and certainly not to Daniel. I saw him once during mediation, in person. He looked smaller, thinner, but stronger, in a way that had nothing to do with his body. His hair had just started growing back in soft, uneven patches. His skin still carried that gray undertone illness leaves behind. But his eyes were clear. He didn't look at me when I walked in, didn't acknowledge me when I sat down across from him. For a moment, I thought maybe silence would be the only thing we had left. Then the mediator asked, "Is there anything either of you would like to say before we finalize the terms?" Daniel finally looked up. And for just a second, I saw not the man sitting across from me, but the man I had married. The one who proposed on a quiet beach in Maine. The one who held my hand through my father's funeral. The one who stayed up all night with me when Lily had a fever at 2 years old. All of that history, compressed into a single look. I would have forgiven anything else, he said. His voice was steady. Too steady. Financial problems, career failures, even if you had just fallen out of love with me. My throat tightened. But this? He shook his head slowly. While I was fighting for my life, while our children thought they might lose their father, his voice broke then, just slightly. This is unforgivable. There it was. Not anger, not hatred.
Finality.
And I knew he meant it. The custody arrangement was clear. Every other weekend. Wednesday dinners. Lily stopped speaking to me almost immediately. Not completely, but enough. Her responses became shorter.
Colder.
Yes. No. I don't. She never asked questions, because she already knew the answers. Max was different. He didn't understand. He just knew things had changed, that I wasn't home anymore, that Daniel cried sometimes when he thought no one was watching, that Lily avoided eye contact. Did you stop loving us? He asked one night during dinner at McDonald's. The question came out of nowhere. Children are like that. They don't circle around pain. They walk straight into it. No, I said immediately. Never. Then why can't you come home? I looked at him, at his small hands gripping a paper cup, at the confusion in his eyes, and I realized something that felt worse than guilt.
Helplessness.
Because, I started, then stopped. Because what? Because I made a mistake? Because I was selfish? Because I chose something else over you? Because I made a bad choice, I said finally. He frowned. Mom says it wasn't a mistake. Of course she did. She says you chose it. I nodded slowly. She's right. 7 years old, and he already understood the difference between a mistake and a decision. Daniel finished treatment 3 months later. I didn't hear it from him. I saw it on social media. Clara posted a photo. Daniel, standing in the cancer center, ringing the bell. Lily and Max beside him, smiling. He looked alive. Really alive. Not surviving. Not fighting. Living. And I wasn't there. I wasn't invited. I didn't deserve to be. Ryan left the company a month after everything came out. Moved to Seattle. He sent one email before he left. I hope you find peace. I didn't respond. Because peace isn't something you find. Not after this. It's something you lose. And sometimes it doesn't come back. I live in an apartment now. It's quiet. Too quiet. There are photos of the kids on the fridge. Drawings taped to the walls from their visits. Toys in a basket in the corner. It looks like a place children visit, not a home they belong to. I go to therapy. My therapist is an older woman.
Direct. Unapologetic.
In our first session, she asked me what I wanted. I want to understand why I did it, I said. She didn't hesitate. You were selfish, she said. You were weak. You chose yourself over your family. I flinched. That's not helpful, I told her. She leaned forward slightly. It's honest, she replied. Then she said something I've been thinking about ever since. The better question isn't why you did it, it's who you want to be now. I don't have an answer for that yet. Last week would have been our anniversary. 13 years. Daniel posted a photo. Him, the kids, a beach in Maine. The same place he proposed. The same place we were supposed to go back to. The caption said, "Making new memories." I stared at that photo for a long time, at the life continuing without me, at the space where I used to exist, and I realized something. This is my life now. Watching from the outside, seeing my children grow up in pieces, knowing someone else might one day walk Lily down the aisle, teach Max how to shave, sit at holiday dinners in my place, someone better. Someone who didn't leave. The affair lasted 4 months. 4 months. That's all it took to destroy 13 years. To lose everything. Sometimes, late at night, I think about those months, not the consequences, not the fallout, just the feeling, the illusion of being alive. And for a split second, I understand why I didn't stop. And the thought disappears just as quickly, because that feeling, it wasn't real. Not in any way that mattered. Real is Daniel fighting for his life and still loving me. Real is Lily looking at me like a stranger. Real is Max asking questions I can't answer. Real is waking up every day knowing I had everything and chose to throw it away. So if there's anything worth saying after all of this, it's this. When life gets hard, when love feels like obligation, when someone new makes you feel seen in ways you've forgotten, be careful, because some choices don't just change your life, they define it. And some betrayals, they don't end, they echo forever.